Elena Vasquez never expected that working late would lead to the most mortifying romantic encounter of her privileged life. But watching coffee explode across marble floors while a devastatingly handsome security guard caught her mid-fall made her realize that some nights rewrite everything you thought you knew about grace, dignity, and the dangerous appeal of a man who stays calm during beautiful disasters. The Meridian Tower's lobby gleamed with the kind of understated luxury that cost more per square foot than most people's annual salaries. All polished marble and crystal. Fixtures that reflected the city's sleepless energy through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 2:15 a.m., the space felt like a private sanctuary where Elena could finally exhale after 16 hours of wrestling with architectural blueprints that refused to cooperate with physics or budget constraints. Her silk pajama set had seemed perfectly appropriate for the quick elevator ride from penthouse to lobby mailbox. The emerald fabric flowing against skin still humming with caffeine and creative frustration. The oversized coffee mug balanced precariously in her hands held the last dregs of her fourth espresso. Liquid motivation for another sleepless night spent chasing the perfect design solution. What she hadn't anticipated was the way her fuzzy slippers would betray her on marble that suddenly felt slick as ice. Or how the universe would choose that exact moment to introduce her to the man who would make her forget every rule about appropriate. Tenant-staff relationships. The coffee launched itself skyward in a perfect arc of disaster. Dark liquid catching lobby light like liquid amber before gravity reclaimed its victory. Elena's world tilted sideways as her feet lost purchase entirely. Designer pajamas providing zero protection against the laws of physics or the mortification flooding her cheeks. With heat, then strong hands caught her waist with practiced precision, steadying her against a chest that felt solid as bedrock beneath black uniform fabric. Her breath caught as she found herself face to face with the most beautiful man she'd ever seen outside architectural magazines featuring impossibly perfect models. "Easy there," he said, his voice carrying quiet authority that made her pulse quicken despite the chaos surrounding them. "I've got you." Dark skin caught the lobby's golden lighting like burnished bronze, while eyes the color of midnight held hers with intensity that made the coffee disaster fade into irrelevant background noise. When his hands shifted to ensure her balance, she glimpsed intricate tattoos wrapping around forearms that suggested stories she suddenly, desperately wanted to hear. "I was just... Elena began, then stopped as coffee dripped from her hair onto silk that now clung to curves with embarrassing precision, testing building security response time. His mouth quirked with barely suppressed amusement as he reached for the napkin dispenser with one hand while maintaining his steadying grip with the other. "How do we do?" The deadpan delivery made her laugh despite wanting to disappear into the marble floor. And Elena realized she'd just met someone who could make even her most mortifying moments feel like the beginning of something extraordinary. Elena never imagined that architectural precision could be applied to stalking. But by Wednesday night, she'd developed a color-coded schedule that would make her project managers weep with envy. All designed around maximizing accidental encounters with a security guard whose smile had been haunting her dreams since the great coffee catastrophe. Her penthouse windows offered a perfect surveillance position overlooking the lobby's marble expanse, where Marcus moved through his nightly rounds with military efficiency that made her pulse quicken from 23 floors above. The building's glass facade reflected her restless pacing as she clutched her phone, speed dialing Rosie at ungodly hours with increasingly desperate mission briefings. "Genius," Elena whispered into her headset at 1:47 a.m., watching Marcus settle behind the security desk with tonight's crossword puzzle. "I forgot my spare gym pass." Totally legitimate reason to visit the lobby. "You don't go to the gym." Rosie's voice crackled through the connection, exhaustion evident despite her loyalty to Elena's nocturnal scheming. "Also, this is the 4th. Forgotten item this week. Lena ignored the logic as she selected her outfit with tactical precision. The black yoga pants hugged curves that had never seen actual yoga, while her cropped Columbia sweatshirt suggested athletic dedication that existed purely in her wardrobe choices. She paused at her bedroom window, backlit by city lights streaming through floor-to-ceiling glass. Knowing the security cameras captured every angle, the elevator descent felt like preparing for battle, anticipation pooling low in her belly as fluorescent numbers counted down to Marcus's territory. When the doors opened, he glanced up from his paperwork with recognition that made her breath catch. Dark eyes holding hints of amusement that suggested he was tracking her patterns with the same precision she applied to his. "Let me guess," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair with casual authority that made her knees weak. "Forgot something essential." "Gym pass," Elena replied, then immediately regretted the choice when his gaze traveled over her pristine athletic, wherewith knowing assessment for tomorrow's workout. The skepticism in his expression should have been embarrassing, but instead it felt like shared conspiracy, intimate knowledge passing between them without words. When he handed her the replacement pass, their fingers brushed with electric contact that sent heat shooting through her carefully constructed excuse. Back in her apartment, Elena discovered a small origami crane tucked inside the gym pass folder, its wings crafted from what looked suspiciously like a security incident report. The precise fold suggested military training applied to decidedly non-regulation purposes, and she found herself smiling at the ceiling while insomnia dissolved into something far more dangerous. Outside her windows, Manhattan glittered with possibilities while 23 floors below, a night security guard folded tomorrow's surprise from yesterday's paperwork. Both of them caught in gravitational pull that defied every professional boundary and social expectation. Elena never expected that minor electrical sabotage could feel like destiny. But watching Marcus's knowing smile as the elevator shuddered to a halt between floors, 23 and 24 made her realize that some conspiracies require two willing participants pretending they don't know exactly what's happening. The confined space suddenly felt charged with possibility as August heat turned the elevator car into an intimate sauna despite the building's supposedly perfect climate control. Elena pressed the emergency call button with theatrical concern, hyper-aware of Marcus standing close enough that she could smell his cologne mixing with something distinctly masculine that made her pulse quicken. "This is Mrs. Patel in 2 for C," crackled the intercom with enthusiastic volume that made them both wince. "I can hear you're stuck. Don't worry, maintenance is on vacation until Monday, but I'll keep you company. Fluffy just had kittens, and they're doing the most adorable thing." Marcus caught Elena's eye with barely suppressed laughter as Mrs. Patel launched into detailed kitten commentary that promised to last hours. When he loosened his security tie with deliberate precision, Elena felt heat that had nothing to do with the broken air conditioning. "It's interesting timing for an elevator malfunction," Marcus said, his voice carrying gentle amusement as he settled against the opposite wall. "Right after you happened to need something from the parking garage." "Purely coincidental," Elena replied, though her cheeks flushed with guilt that felt oddly like anticipation. When she pulled off her blazer, revealing the silk camisole beneath, Marcus's gaze traced the movement with attention that made her breath catch. "My father died in Afghanistan," he said quietly, the admission cutting through Mrs. Patel's monologue about litterbox training, IED on a convoy I was supposed to lead. The vulnerability in his voice made Elena's chest ache with recognition. "Car accident when I was 16, she whispered back. "Drunk driver hit us coming home from my graduation dinner. My parents died instantly." The elevator walls seemed to compress around their shared grief, creating intimacy that felt more dangerous than any physical attraction. When Marcus reached for her hand, her fingers intertwined with desperate gentleness that spoke languages neither had learned in their separate survivals. "That's why you can't sleep," he observed, his thumb tracing circles against her palm with reverent attention. "Building feels safer than anywhere else." "That's why you work nights," Alina replied, understanding flooding through her as she watched. Shadows play across scars that decorated his forearms like testament to battles survived. Crowds feel overwhelming after ... And Mittens is definitely the troublemaker. Mrs. Patel continued obliviously as Alina and Marcus moved closer. Drawn by gravity that defied every rational thought about appropriate elevator behavior. The maintenance key turned in the lock just as their lips were about to meet. Fluorescent hallway light flooding their private world with cruel timing that left them breathing hard and wanting everything. Alina never imagined that social media stalking could feel like archaeology. But 3 hours into her deep dive investigation of Marcus Thompson, she'd unearthed enough contradictions to make her question everything she thought she knew about assumptions, privilege, and the dangerous habit of underestimating people based on their current circumstances. Her corner office overlooked Manhattan's architectural symphony while multiple browser tabs transformed her pristine workspace into command central for what Rosie had dubbed Operation Background Check. The afternoon light streaming through floor 2 ceiling windows illuminated spreadsheets that would make the FBI proud. All cross-referenced social media accounts and academic databases that painted an increasingly complex picture. "This can't be right," Alina muttered, staring at her laptop screen while Rosie perched on the edge of the mahogany desk with growing horror. PhD in structural engineering from MIT, summa cum laude, published research on earthquake-resistant design. "Alina, this is insane even for you," Rosie said, though her eyes widened at the marathon photos that had just populated Alina's screen. Also, holy hell, those abs could be classified as architectural achievements. The shirtless running photos from Marcus's Boston Marathon days made Alina's mouth go dry with appreciation that had nothing to do with athletic accomplishment and everything to do with the way afternoon shadows would play across muscles that suggested serious dedication to physical fitness. When she scrolled to his academic achievements, guilt twisted in her stomach like nausea. "He designed sustainable housing for veterans," Alina read aloud, her voice barely steady as the implications crashed over her. Groundbreaking work on affordable construction methods featured in Architectural Digest 3 years ago. The timeline painted a devastating picture. Brilliant engineer to PTSD episode during company presentation. 2 medical leave, 2 unemployment, 2 night security guard who folded origami birds from incident reports. Elena's assumptions about Marcus's education and background crumbled like poorly designed foundations under the weight of actual facts. "Wait," Rosie said, leaning closer to the screen with investigative intensity. "Check the employment verification." Alina clicked through LinkedIn profiles with increasing desperation until the truth hit her like cold water. The Marcus Thompson she'd been stalking was a different person entirely. Her Marcus didn't have social media presence, no digital footprint. Beyond basic employment records that revealed nothing about PhD programs or marathon times. "I've been researching the wrong person," Alina whispered, shame flooding her cheeks as she realized the depth of her invasion into some stranger's privacy while completely missing the actual man. His hands had steadied her during elevator confessions. The origami crane on her desk suddenly felt like evidence of her own prejudice. Delicate artistry created by someone she'd never bothered to actually ask about his story. Outside her windows, Manhattan buzzed with hidden complexities while Alina sat surrounded by the wreckage of her assumptions. Understanding that some research requires conversation instead of surveillance. Alina never expected that manufacturing a yogurt emergency at 3 a.m. would lead to the most important introduction of her adult life. But watching a miniature version of Marcus emerge from behind bodega shelves, clutching Lucky Charms made her realize that some midnight grocery runs revealed family secrets that change everything about how attraction transforms into something deeper and infinitely more complicated than fluorescent lit. Bodega felt like a stage set for intimate theater as she stood frozen in the dairy aisle, hyper-aware that her emergency need for Greek yogurt had just collided with Marcus's actual parenting responsibilities. The 8-year-old boy studying her with dark eyes that mirrored his father's carried himself with quiet seriousness that made her chest ache with protective instincts she'd never experienced. "Dad, is this the lady who keeps forgetting stuff?" Jaden asked with devastating directness that made both adults freeze mid-reach for organic produce. "Mrs. Patel told me someone's been visiting the lobby a lot." "Jaden," Marcus said, his voice carrying gentle warning while his eyes held Elena's with apology and something that looked dangerously like hope. "This is Ms. Vasquez from the penthouse." When Marcus lifted Elena to reach honey from the top shelf, their bodies pressed together with domestic intimacy that felt more charged than any elevator encounter. His hands spanned her waist with reverent attention while she struggled to focus on shopping instead of the way his breath felt warm against her neck. "You're really tall," Jaden observed, crunching cereal straight from the box with 8-year-old logic. "Dad said you're an architect. Do you build stuff like tree houses?" The conversation flowed with surprising ease as they moved through narrow aisles, Elena finding herself charmed by Jaden's rapid-fire questions about skyscrapers and bridge engineering. When he mentioned wanting to design tree houses for kids who felt scared at night, she caught Marcus's expression shifting into something vulnerable and proud. "Mom used to have bad dreams," Jaden explained matter-of-factly while selecting chocolate ice cream. "Now, sometimes I get them, so I sleep over at Dad's work. The lobby's really safe." The casual revelation hit Elena like emotional whiplash, understanding flooding through her as she realized Marcus brought his son to the building during crisis nights, creating sanctuary from whatever nightmares haunted a child who'd lost his mother. On the building's rooftop garden afterward, they shared ice cream while Manhattans sparkled below like scattered diamonds. Jaden curled against Elena's side with trust that felt simultaneously precious and terrifying, while Marcus watched them with expression that suggested he was falling as hard and fast as she was. "Elena," Jaden said sleepily, chocolate smudged on his chin, "are you going to marry my dad?" The question hung in summer air, thick with possibility, while two adults tried to remember how to breathe around the weight of a child's innocent hope. Elena never imagined that protective rage could feel like religious awakening. But watching Karen weaponize Marcus's military service against him in family court made her understand that some battles require abandoning every social boundary to defend the family you've accidentally fallen in love with against people who mistake trauma for weakness. The courthouse's marble halls echoed with the kind of institutional authority that usually made Elena feel confident, but today the formal setting felt like a battleground where everything precious hung in the balance. Marcus sat rigid beside her in his only suit, jaw clenched as Karen's lawyer painted his PTSD as evidence of instability that threatened Jaden's well-being. Mr. Thompson's documented episodes of anxiety and sleep disturbance, the lawyer continued, with clinical precision that made Elena's hands ball into fists, combined with his current employment situation, raised serious concerns about his ability to provide stable care. The courthouse bathroom afterward provided desperate sanctuary where Elena pressed Marcus against cold tile with hungry desperation that tasted like defiance and felt like claiming territory in enemy space. Their mouths crashed together with passion intensified by shared fury, his hands tangling in her hair as they found solace in each other's bodies while their world threatened to collapse outside. "Marry me," Elena whispered against his lips, the proposal torn from some primal place that demanded action. "For Jaden, for custody." "For no," Marcus replied, his voice carrying gentle firmness that made her chest ache. "Not like this. Not because you feel sorry for us." Judge Morrison's chambers felt suffocating as Alina took the witness stand. Her voice steady, despite internal trembling, as she detailed Marcus's character with the same precision she applied to architectural specifications. When she accidentally referred to Karen as the complainant who seems intent on punishing military service, the judge's raised eyebrow suggested she'd crossed some professional line. "Ms. Vasquez," the judge said with careful neutrality, "you've known Mr. Thompson how long exactly?" The question hung in formal air, while Alina calculated months into meaningful testimony about a man. Origami birds had become more precious than any architectural award. Long enough to know that Jaden feels safest with his father, Your Honor. Long enough to see how Marcus puts his son's needs above everything else, including his own healing. The temporary custody ruling felt like reprieve rather than victory. 6 months to prove stability, while Karen's accusations lingered like poison in fluorescent-lit air. Outside the courthouse, Jaden hugged Elena's waist with desperate gratitude. That made her understand some families form through crisis rather than convenience. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, his hand finding hers as they watched Jaden skip ahead toward ice cream that would taste like borrowed time and hope, disguised as normal childhood moments. Alina never expected that good intentions could feel like emotional demolition, but watching Marcus's face crumble as he discovered her surprise renovation made her realize that some gestures of love accidentally become displays of power that wound the very people you're trying to protect. The spare room gleamed with transformation that had cost more than Marcus's annual salary. All custom-built tins and safety features that her contractor team had installed with bewildered efficiency. Child-proofed outlets, dotted walls painted in calming blues, while a window seat overlooked Central Park with cushions designed to weather nightmares and sleepless fears. "What the hell is this?" Marcus's voice carried quiet devastation as he stood frozen in the doorway. Jaden bouncing excitedly around furniture that represented everything Marcus couldn't provide on security guard wages. "I wanted him to have a safe space here," Alina began, then faltered at the expression that transformed his features into something she'd never seen before. "For the custody hearing. 4 bad nights. 4. For when his father isn't good enough." The words cut through her explanation like shattered glass, carrying shame that made her chest ache with understanding too late. When his 1-bedroom apartment and second-hand furniture don't meet your standards. Jaden's delighted exploration of built-in storage became background soundtrack to their first real fight. His joy contrasting sharply with the tension crackling between adults who suddenly felt like strangers navigating class warfare disguised as home improvement. "You think I don't know I can't give him what he deserves?" Marcus continued, his voice breaking on truths that made Alina want to take back every well-meaning construction decision. "You think I don't lie awake calculating how many security shifts by school supplies, birthday presents, anything that makes him feel normal?" The fight dissolved into desperate reunion against the window seat she'd commissioned for someone else's child. Their bodies finding forgiveness through heated touching that spoke languages neither could articulate through wounded pride. His mouth claimed hers with hunger that tasted like reconciliation and felt like learning to trust again, despite every instinct for self-protection. "I'm hiring you," Alina whispered against his neck afterward, her hands tracing scars that represented battle survived and dignity maintained despite impossible circumstances. Security consultant for the building's upgrade project. $50,000 to start, more when you see what needs fixing. The silence stretched like dawn breaking over Manhattan, while Marcus processed professional partnership disguised as personal salvation. When Jaden called from his new room about naming it the Treehouse, both adults understood that some solutions require rebuilding more than furniture. "Partners?" Alina asked, offering equality instead of charity. "Partners," Marcus replied, his smile suggesting they'd just negotiated the most important contract of their complicated lives. Alina never imagined that bringing Marcus to family dinner would feel like reverse culture shock. But watching him navigate her mother's kitchen with military precision, while Jaden charmed 3 generations of Vasquez relatives in broken Spanish, made her realize that some introductions reveal how far you've traveled from home and how desperately you want to return. Abuela's restaurant buzzed with Sunday evening energy. All mismatched chairs and family photos that documented decades of immigrant success, measured in square footage and college graduations. The scent of sofrito and Café Con Leche created an atmosphere that Elena's Manhattan penthouse could never replicate, while salsa music competed with overlapping conversations in rapid fire Spanglish that made Marcus's eyes widen with amused overwhelm. Mira. Que guapo, Elena's mother Isabel whispered to her sister Rosa, though her stage whisper carried across the crowded dining room. And the little one, tan precioso with those eyes. Jaden had attached himself to Elena's teenage cousin, Sofia, practicing Spanish phrases that came out adorably mangled while she taught him to fold empanadas with the patience of someone who understood what it meant to feel different. When he called Marcus Papi in perfect pronunciation, the entire restaurant fell silent with collective approval that felt like family verdict. Your grandmother, Isabel said suddenly, gripping Marcus's forearms with recognition that made Elena's pulse quicken. Dorothy Thompson from St. Augustine's. She taught my English class 30 years ago. The connection sparked stories that flowed like wine, while Marcus helped in the kitchen with competence that impressed Elena's father, Carlos, who rarely approved of anyone's knife skills. When Miguel emerged from the back office, looking hollow-eyed and defensive, Elena felt familiar dread, mixing with protective instincts for both the brother she was losing and the man she was falling for. Army. Miguel asked, studying Marcus's posture with veteran recognition that transcended family politics. The conversation that followed happened in shorthand understood by those who'd survived combat. Words about night sweats and hypervigilance that Marcus navigated with gentle honesty. When Miguel mentioned struggling since discharge, Marcus offered resources with matter-of-fact kindness that made Elena's chest ache with love and admiration. Later, in her childhood bedroom with its Quinceañera photos and participation trophies, Elena pressed Marcus against walls painted pink 15 years ago while her family celebrated downstairs. Their desperate touching felt like claiming sanctuary in the space where she dreamed of different futures. His mouth finding hers with hunger that tasted like belonging. They love you, she whispered against his throat, her hands working his shirt upward with urgent need. They love us, Marcus corrected, the pronoun carrying weight that transformed everything about how she understood family, acceptance, and the dangerous beauty of letting people see exactly who you've become. Elena never expected that discovering someone had been in her apartment would feel like violation wearing a 3-piece suit, but watching building owner Richard Sterling's calculated concern while Detective Kim questioned Marcus made her realize that some threats hide behind boardroom smiles and expensive legal counsel designed to deflect suspicion onto convenient targets. The security office's multiple screens displayed footage that made Elena's cheeks burn with embarrassment as her midnight wanderings played out in digital clarity. Every manufactured excuse, every lingerie-clad emergency trip to the lobby, every moment of their growing attraction documented with security camera precision that felt invasive despite being her own building. Access logs show your keycard was used Wednesday night, Detective Kim said, her voice carrying professional neutrality as she studied Marcus with cop instincts that missed nothing. Same time someone entered Ms. Vasquez's apartment. Sterling leaned against the mahogany desk with practiced authority, his silver hair and tailored suit suggesting old money stability that made accusations against Marcus feel like foregone conclusions. I'm sure there's an explanation, but we must consider all possibilities. The unspoken implications hung in recycled air while Alina watched. Marcus's military bearing stiffened into something that looked dangerously like resignation. When footage of their elevator encounters played across monitors, his jaw clenched with protective fury that had nothing to do with personal embarrassment and everything to do with Elena's privacy being violated for public consumption. "Turn it off," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying authority that made everyone in the room pause. "She doesn't deserve this." Alina felt something fundamental shift in her chest as she realized Marcus was defending her honor while facing accusations that could destroy everything he'd built for Jaden. The courage required to prioritize her dignity over his own survival made her understand exactly why she'd fallen so completely for someone who carried himself like a man worth trusting. "Check the maintenance schedules," Marcus continued, his investigation training evident as he pulled up building records with systematic precision. "Cross-reference them with the entry times, utility access, anyone with master keys." The data painted a different picture as Marcus's military methodology revealed patterns that police procedures had missed. When Sterling's face shifted from concerned cooperation to something that looked suspiciously like panic, Alina realized they'd just identified their real problem. "Interesting," Detective Kim observed, studying financial records that Marcus had somehow accessed. "Building maintenance funds show significant irregularities around the same dates as the security breaches." Sterling's expensive watch caught fluorescent light as his hand trembled slightly, polished facade cracking to reveal desperation beneath corporate authority. The man who'd been pointing fingers at Marcus suddenly looked like someone with far more to hide than apartment access codes. "Sometimes," Marcus said quietly, "the biggest threats were the nicest suits." Alina never imagined that watching handcuffs close around the wrists of someone you love could feel like witnessing your own execution. But seeing Marcus arrested in front of Jaden while Sterling's fabricated evidence painted him as a thief made her understand that some injustices require burning down everything you've built to fight systems designed to protect people who look like her at the expense of people who look like him. The police station's fluorescent lighting cast harsh shadows across faces that had learned to navigate crisis with military precision. Though nothing had prepared them for Karen's triumphant appearance with emergency custody papers that transformed Marcus's arrest into complete family destruction. When Jaden reached for his father through safety glass, Alina felt her heart shatter into pieces that cut deeper than any architectural failure she'd ever experienced. Embezzled funds traced to accounts with his signature, Da Patricia Wong. Explained with prosecutorial efficiency that ignored every reasonable doubt about Sterling's convenient evidence. Building maintenance money funneled through shell companies registered to Marcus Thompson. The courthouse steps became theater for Elena's family's righteous fury. All hand-painted signs in Spanish and English that declared Marcus's innocence with grammatical errors that somehow made their loyalty more precious. When Miguel held a poster reading "Justice for our brother Marcus," Alina understood that some battles require choosing sides publicly, regardless of personal cost. "You're liquidating everything?" Rosie asked with horror as Alina signed papers that transformed investment portfolios into legal defense funds. "Your retirement, the condo in Miami, your mother's medical fund." The jail's visiting room felt like purgatory designed by bureaucrats who'd never loved anyone enough to risk everything for their freedom. When Alina pressed her palm against plexiglass that separated her from Marcus's exhausted face, their connection transcended every barrier that institutions could construct between them. "Don't do this," Marcus said, his voice carrying defeat that made her want to tear down walls with bare hands. "Don't destroy your life for someone who might not survive this." "Then survive it," Alina replied, her voice carrying steel inherited from generations of women who'd fought impossible battles for their families. "Because I'm not going anywhere." The visiting room guard's discreet absence during shift change provided stolen moments where Alina proved her commitment through desperate touching that spoke languages deeper than words. Their bodies found connection, despite surveillance designed to prevent exactly this kind of intimacy. Love expressed through whatever contact, concrete and metal couldn't eliminate. Outside the courthouse afterward, Mrs. Patel waved her phone with triumphant excitement that suggested their salvation might come from the most unexpected source. "I have everything," she announced with conspiratorial glee. "Every lie Sterling told. Every conversation about framing Marcus. My cat's knocked over. My tripod, but the audio is perfect." Alina never expected that justice could sound like Mrs. Patel's triumphant voice echoing through marble courthouse halls. But watching Sterling's face crumble as audio evidence played his own words back to him made her realize that some vindications arrived through the most unlikely witnesses armed with smartphone recordings and righteous indignation disguised as neighborhood surveillance. The courtroom erupted in controlled chaos as Mrs. Patel's footage revealed months of Sterling's carefully orchestrated frame job. Every conversation about pinning it on the security guard documented with accidental precision by someone who'd been trying to capture her cat's antics. When handcuffs closed around Sterling's wrists instead of Marcus's, Alina felt justice taste sweeter than any architectural award she'd ever received. All charges dropped. Da Wong announced with professional efficiency that couldn't mask her embarrassment about prosecuting an innocent man. "Mr. Thompson, the city apologizes for this miscarriage of justice." Jaden's reunion with his father felt like watching broken pieces reassemble into something stronger than original construction. 8-year-old arms wrapped around Marcus's neck, with desperate relief that made every adult witness remember why some battles matter more than pride or professional reputation. When Karen approached with genuine remorse, replacing her previous hostility, Alina understood that crisis sometimes transforms enemies into reluctant allies. "I was wrong," Karen said quietly, her voice carrying shame that made Alina's anger dissolve into something resembling forgiveness. "Jaden needs his father. He needs both of you." The building's lobby felt different when they returned. Transformed from crime scene into sanctuary, where Mrs. Patel held court like accidental detective genius, surrounded by neighbors who suddenly viewed her as community hero. Her announcement about starting a private investigation business made everyone laugh despite exhaustion that came from surviving legal warfare. Head of Building Security, the management company's representative announced, offering Marcus promotion. That came with salary increase and professional respect he'd been denied throughout the ordeal, with full benefits and housing allowance. Later, in the penthouse that finally felt like home rather than fortress, Alina and Marcus claimed their space with desperate celebration that tasted like freedom and felt like reclaiming territory that tasted his territory that had been under siege. Their bodies found each other with hunger intensified by separation. Every touch proving they'd survived systematic attempts to destroy their connection. "We made it," Alina whispered against his throat, her hands mapping scars that told stories of battles survived and dignity maintained despite impossible odds. "We're just getting started," Marcus replied, his voice carrying promise that extended beyond personal victory into future they could finally build together, without looking over their shoulders. Outside their windows, Manhattan glittered with possibilities, while inside their reclaimed sanctuary, a family that had been tested by fire prepared to write their next chapter from position of hard-earned strength. Alina never imagined that wedding planning could feel like architectural project management on steroids. But watching Jaden direct contractors to install a treehouse altar on the building's rooftop garden made her realize that some ceremonies require 8-year-old vision to transform ordinary spaces into places where love stories reach their perfect structural completion. The rooftop bloomed with controlled chaos as both families merged wedding traditions that shouldn't have worked together but created Something beautiful through sheer determination and Mrs. Patel's surprisingly competent online ordination credentials. Elena's mother argued with Marcus's aunt about flower arrangements while Jaden sketched seating charts that prioritized sightlines for his architectural masterpiece. "The rings go in my treehouse," Jaden announced with authority that made seasoned. Contractors defer to his expertise. And Mrs. Patel stands underneath because she's magic now. Mrs. Patel preened with official importance. Her judge robes ordered from Amazon, creating dignity that felt both ridiculous and perfect for someone who'd accidentally saved their entire relationship through surveillance disguised as cat photography. When she practiced vows that included personal commentary about Marcus's character development, everyone understood that tradition sometimes requires renovation. Elena, Jaden said during rehearsal, his voice carrying seriousness that made adults stop mid-conversation. "When you marry Dad, can I call you Mom? Because you already feel like my mom." The silence that followed could have shattered crystal while Marcus wiped his eyes with hands that had learned to be gentle despite everything military training had taught him about emotional armor. Elena's yes came out as whisper that carried across Manhattan wind like promise finally spoken aloud. The ceremony itself felt like coming home to a place that had never existed before. They'd built it together. All overlapping families and community that had formed around crisis survived through stubborn love. When Marcus lifted her onto the treehouse platform for their first dance, Manhattan sparkled below like blessing from city that had tested them through every possible trial. "There's something else," Elena whispered during their slow dance, her hand guiding his to her still flat stomach where their future was already growing. "Jaden's going to be a big brother." The wedding night in their renovated master suite felt like claiming territory that finally belonged to them completely. Every touch proving they'd survived systematic destruction to build something unbreakable from materials tested by fire. When morning light revealed architectural plans spread across their bed, affordable housing designs with Marcus listed as security consultant, Elena understood that some love stories end by beginning again. Outside their windows, construction crews prepared to convert the building's unused basement into community center for military families, while inside their sanctuary, a family that had been forged through beautiful disaster planned their next impossible dream.